Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here is your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome for another Sunday morning of Faith in Our Hometown. I'm so glad you've joined us this morning. I still am always humbled when I hear people at the grocery store and they'll say, hey, I just wanted to say I really watched your show. Well, I'm just glad that we come together on a Sunday morning to talk about things that matter to us, or talk about the way that we can connect as people of faith, or when we start taking those things that we do in our daily lives and the way that we try to put those things into action into the world. And our show today is going to be about one of that. I'm going to say I've actually got one of my own parishioners on today, Dr. Alex Binder. Who is, I don't ever get to call him that, which is very entertaining. He's a professor at Pitt State, and he's an economics professor, but we're not going to talk necessarily about economics this morning, but we're going to be talking about where faith hits how we try to figure out how we live life and how we try to put some of those things into action. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about the way we do that as a society and how we try to provide for the common good for people. So we're going to be back to talk about some of those things and with Dr. Alex Binder, and we're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute, so don't go away.
Hi, I'm Karen Brown. Last year, my sister was diagnosed with ovarian stage 3C cancer in her early 40s. As a mother of two beautiful children, I didn't think twice about undergoing genetic testing here at Mercy. Even though I have grandparents and an uncle battle cancer, seeing a genetic counselor wasn't something that ever crossed my mind until my sister's results showed that she was BRCA2 positive.
We've come a long way, especially in about the last 5 years. Genetic testing can pinpoint the cancers that you are at highest risk for in order to detect them earlier or, if possible, prevent them.
My genetic counselor at Mercy, Robin, took note of my family health history and answered all of my questions. She even suggested my brother get tested. Robin said if he tested positive, he may be more likely to be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and that is what I lost my uncle to.
There are many other types of cancer that are also possibly hereditary, such as colorectal cancers, pancreatic cancers.
I honestly was prepared to hear that I was positive, but indeed I was negative. And what a huge relief that was, not only to me, but to my family, to know I wasn't at a great risk of developing breast or ovarian cancer.
Diet, lifestyle choices such as smoking or drinking all contribute to our risk for cancer. Genetic testing is taking just kind of one piece of that. Talk to your primary care doctor or your OBGYN and ask for a referral to a genetic counselor.
Well, again, thanks for joining us this morning for Faith in Our Hometown. My guest this morning, Dr. Alex Binder, so I'm just going to call him Alex because that's what I'm used to calling him anyway. He's a professor at Pitt State in the economics department. Alex, this is one of those moments where I'm going to ask you to connect from that world of higher education with the world of people who are watching on a Sunday morning, who are just trying to connect and trying to connect dots. And this is one of those things I love because we don't get to talk about some of this stuff very often, which is going to be, I hope it's going to be fun, and I hope you'll have a good time too and still talk to me next Sunday morning. But at any rate, so you're in the economics department. Mm-hmm. So how do you take something big like that a lot of people say, God, how do we even all understand that? And then apply that to real life. And then you actually even wrote, we've written papers on it. You did your dissertation around certain areas about where faith in the world and how those big things connect. How'd you get pulled in there? How did all that work for you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm an unusual economist with an interest in moral philosophy and economics and in Catholic social thought or teaching in particular. I went to Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas for my undergraduate, and I really didn't know what I wanted to study. All I really wanted to do was play basketball, and I got the opportunity to do that, thankfully, and that got me there. And when I was there, I took a class in economics and really fell in love with the subject. I know that makes me sound nerdy.
He's really a lot more fun than that, I just want you to know. But actually, somebody's got to understand it, and I'm glad you do. Yeah. I mean, that's why I can come to you and ask you those questions. So you fall in love with economics.
Right, and then I took a class on Catholic social teaching, which was actually co-taught with an economics professor and an ethics or theological professor, and I really fell in love with that subject.
So say something about just in general, what is Catholic social teaching? Why does anybody out there care?
Yeah, there's a lot of Catholic teachings, and Catholic social teaching would be those teachings that inform the faithful on how to basically interact and behave toward each other with small, micro type aspects, behavior with each other in a community, and big picture, global, political type issues as well.
Right, and again, let's just go ahead and even expand this a little bit more. I mean, obviously these things can apply to most Christians and most Christian frameworks. The way that we're going to apply them as Catholics might be a little specific or a little different, but really the principles that are in the Catholic social teachings come from the scriptures,
right,
and what Jesus said, and what we, how we've interpreted through the years, and all those things anyway. So that's going to be not just Catholic social teaching, but I mean, basically, in some ways, also Christian social teaching. But we kind of, we kind of whipped it up into, with dogmas and, and books and, writings and encyclicals and all that kind of good stuff to talk about that. So what are the principles? What are we talking about when we talk about that stuff for our listeners?
Yeah, so the teaching's been around for centuries. A lot of it is found in the Bible, as you said, and there is a lot of agreement with a lot of the other Christian denominations. The specific principles, therefore, can be found in the Bible, and it's been elucidated or taught maybe more clearly or applied more directly to our modern situations and contexts that we find ourselves in. Pope Leo XIII wrote an encyclical or letter in 1891 that started off what became known more properly or formally as Catholic social teaching, applying to the big debate at the time, at the end of the 19th century, which was between capitalism and socialism. So there's some really big topics there, but if we really to boil it down to some basic principles, you wouldn't really need to go to the encyclicals. It would start with the dignity of the human person, the dignity of life, because we are all created in the image and likeness of God. So we're not with the viewpoint of we've got an instrumental value where you're only good insofar as you can provide for society or produce. We say argue for or seek to protect life in the womb and the elderly, all the vulnerable. There's something called the preferential option for the poor, which is this teaching that the poor and the vulnerable aren't worth more than anyone else. They're worth the same. We're all worth the same in God's eyes, but that the poor and the vulnerable need special protection that they're not currently getting. They don't have access to enough resources, or our current policies or the way our society is treating some individuals isn't just toward them or fair. So that's probably the core principle, the dignity of the human person, the importance of the family, the fundamental institution of society, how important that is for the formation of children, for their faith life and for their economic and social life. There's a little maybe more academic type principles like subsidiarity and solidarity, which I could make it more simple.
You were not the first person that's brought these up on this show. I just want you to know. Yeah, some of our friends at Water Gardens will once in a while bring some of these things up when we're talking about some of these things. So I mean, these are things that we have talked about, regularly. Try to do some of that. But let's talk a little bit about where the rubber hits the road, okay? Because these are wonderful principles, and obviously I think that any of us that try to plumb the scriptures or plumb the life of Jesus and what he tried to teach us and try to apply it in our day, okay? This is really the fun, for me, it becomes the fun part, and especially working with college students and doing all that stuff. I mean, I love all that because they're really trying to say, how do I take all this stuff and put it into my life?
Sure.
How do I do all that? So how have you figured out how to do that, like as an economist? And then I want to talk a little bit about how we might do that as we're approaching elections and everything, okay?
Yeah, I think it helps to start with knowing the teachings, the moral principles, and that's the role the church sees itself in, mother and teacher, teaching the faithful and those interested or curious about the moral principles we need to apply. But there's this idea or principle, this teaching known as prudential application. The church itself doesn't offer any particular set of solutions for the problems we face as society at a small level or a global level. Instead, they give us the principles by which we would then apply them to those problems, and they leave it to us, the laity, to the faithful, to the experts in the field, and to the people on the ground to figure out the best solutions, the best set of government policies, the best set of behaviors, best set of institutions that allow for a just and charitable society for the common good, as we'd say.
So that'll work, like, say, for example, at an individual level. It certainly work at a family level.
Right.
Okay. So how am I a just person? How do I act properly in relationship to God and everybody else as an individual, then certainly at a family level, certainly then at a community level, okay, so my neighborhood, my church, all those things, and then it spreads out from there, you know, to where are we as a state, where are we as a nation, and then the whole world. So I mean, these things are threads that run throughout this entire tapestry that weaves life together in that regard.
Now you just taught us the principle of subsidiarity, Father, that everybody has a role to play, big and small, to tackle our social problems. So if you know the teaching, you can then ask the question to yourself and get more information. The more understanding we have of science and social science, we can also craft better solutions to the problems that we face.
So how do we take this stuff? I mean, this is again, this is how, also for you as a teacher. How do you take this stuff that can exist up here, and then bring it down to where everybody can kind of take a bite out of it and start chewing on it a little?
Yeah, I mean that's the job of a teacher, right? And that's what I really love doing as a professor of economics at Pitt State. I don't work Catholic social teaching too specifically into my macroeconomics classes, but I do try to impress upon my students the importance of ethics and moral issues, and it really starts with asking them questions involving real-world examples, things like that. You don't want to dive right into the academic vocabulary necessarily, because you'll lose them pretty quickly. You can see the light go off in their eye, and you lose interest. But if you ask them a question that hits home to them, or you get them thinking about the problem, even if they don't have all of the knowledge that there is to have about that particular issue, you kickstart an interest, which will help motivate them to want to know more. And really, I think I found that to be successful in my short career as a teacher so far.
So how would we do that even, how do you do it as a family? What do you guys do as a family to kind of bring these issues home? How do you do it with little kids? Have you figured that one out yet?
No, definitely haven't figured it out yet. I'm still a work in progress. But it's basically what I just said, that we know the moral principles, my wife and I, and we have more to learn about them. And we get ideas from other families. It's always seeking ideas because they don't come from us alone. We do come up with some, or my wife comes up with some creative ideas for applying the teaching. And I think the misconception out there is it's Catholic social teaching is a lot about like charity and personal giving, which is an important part of it, but it's not the only part. We're not just talking about giving money or giving our time. We need to do those things. We need to go beyond that, and it really comes down to just relationships in general toward each other. My wife and I need to be just and charitable toward each other, the way we speak to each other, the time that we give to each other, then towards our children, to be that model for them as our parents were for us, and then to share that model with our friends and with our community, and try to be the best we can be, so that hopefully that'll be inspiring to others and give them ideas, and can all learn from each other that way. So
yeah, and it gets, I was in high school when I began to figure out how complicated this whole thing is, okay? And I will, God love her, God rest her soul, she was a Sister St. Joseph, and Loretta Hennicus was her name, and she taught us at the high school I went to. And it was a high school seminary, but it was also a regular day school for everybody too. I mean, it was just so, but we were kind of a hybrid, weird place. And it was a weird place, but we loved it. But Loretta was doing things like teaching us the fact that, okay, if we were going to go to the gas station, would we pick a gas station where they did things that, on their corporate level, that were just and right? If we were going to go to the grocery store and we were going to buy bananas or we were going to buy grapes, should we buy bananas or grapes because of the way the workers were treated accordingly? I mean, all of a sudden we were tied in knots, because here we were, these young impressionable high school guys who were trying to figure out how to do things the way Jesus would want us to do them.
Sure. And
suddenly we were realizing that no matter what we did, it was all tied together. So at any rate, this is complicated. Now we're going to come back. We're also going to talk a little bit about how we're going to do this in an election year and all that kind of good stuff. And God, we're not going to pick any sides here, but we're going to be talking about the principles right after this quick break. So don't go away. We're here with Alex Binder on Faith in Our Hometown.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Okay, so my guest this morning, Dr. Alex Binder, otherwise known as Alex, okay, is professor of economics at Pitt State, and so it's good to have you with us, and it's fun to have this conversation on this level because we don't get a chance to talk like this too often, and most of the time we're just watching kids and doing all that stuff, okay? So we were talking a little bit before the break about, as a high school student, suddenly realizing how complicated this whole thing is and how all this stuff is tied together. How do we do that? How do we teach that to the rest of the young adults in the parish? How do we teach that to our senior citizens? How do we do that in our daily lives? And how do we do it when we go to vote? Trying to reflect issues that we think that Jesus wants us to be after. Because, there are some people out there who will say, we got to do this, vote for this way because this is going to reflect Jesus' thing. And then somebody else is going to come along and say, but this also is going to reflect Jesus' thing. And now all of a sudden we got two different people to vote for. How do we make sense out of all this, Alex?
Yeah, it's a big problem. It's actually what half of my dissertation was about, these different groups of thought in Catholic economics or Catholic politics offering different arguments for this or that solution or this or that behavior. And there's disagreements there, there's debates there, very interesting if you're into that kind of thing, like I am. But it can be a lot for any one person to try to tackle or wrap their mind around. So for those like in high school or whatever, I wouldn't try to worry them or burden them with too many decisions. Just try to do the best they can with the knowledge that they have at the time and improve and gain knowledge as you can. But in regards to you'd say which voice you should follow, there's certainly listen to our bishops and our priests, the U.S. Council, our Conference of Bishops.
Careful listening to your priest, but that's okay.
Have a guide for voters. It's Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship, and they outline the principles by which we should consider when making our decisions in elections, or not even just about elections, but our individual choices as consumers or as business owners, as producers in the economic sphere. So it's we all have a responsibility to contribute as best we can to society, to the common good, to justice, to charity, and I wouldn't say it can be a lot to take on. It can be very overwhelming. So start with the bishops, the priests, do the best you can there. Maybe listen to experts in the field, what they have to say about the particular effects that this or that policy might have in economics or in I'd say international diplomatic type issues. Certainly be good to listen to them. But there'll always be sides, there'll always be disagreements. The church, again, doesn't offer any technical solutions. They leave that to the experts in the field, but they give us the moral principles we should consider.
Yeah, I'll bring it down again a little bit for like our listeners. So for example, if I'm preaching, some people will say, who am I supposed to vote for? Well, I'm never going to tell anybody who to vote for. I'm going to take, frankly, I'll praise all the parties for certain things and for certain stances, and I'll criticize all the parties for certain stances and certain things. And at the end of the day, so I said, well, so you've praised and criticized all of them. Now who am I going to vote for? And I said, that's why you've got to make a prudential judgment based upon all of those things. How are you going to put all those things in the hamper together and make a prudential judgment on who's going to do the most good and the least amount of harm? Because I got news for you. I don't care who you vote for, you're going to do some good and you're going to create some harm. I do not think it's possible, especially in our primarily two-party system, okay, not to. How do you do all that? So, my congregation gets so sick of me because, really, literally, I never wander into any of that stuff without taking a swipe at everybody because I can't afford to. I don't want anybody saying, well, you're this party or you're that party. I am definitely an independent, and there are certain things, I just keep saying to everybody, give me better candidates to vote for, and then I won't have, then my choice will be overwhelmingly easy. Right. But because you won't give me candidates that are going to come out the way I think on all these issues, how am I going to make that prudential judgment when I go in there? So what's your advice to people as we're going into this election year, Alex? You're not going to tell anybody how to vote either.
No. I don't know if you want my advice. It's really complex. You said there's a lot of issues to consider. A lot of them are very important. We can't consider one and not the others. And as you said, our political parties don't make that easy on us, as they can tend to be in agreement with our principles, our Christian understanding of humanity and society in some ways and not in others. There's other philosophies and theologies out there besides the Christian view of things too. So,
Sure.
And we live in a pluralistic society that makes it more complicated and difficult because we want to live in communion with those who disagree with us in harmony and peace. We also want to push for a more just society that protects and serves the common good.
Yeah.
So
And it's
really
tricky.
just takes an evaluation of each candidate. You have to consider what they say, but you also have to consider that what they say may not be what they actually do, and then you have to consider what is likely that they're going to do.
Oh my gosh,
right?
I'm shocked. But go ahead. Yeah.
What are the effects going to be of what they do? What are they capable of doing? What good can they do? What's the least amount of harm they can cause? And I think we should be careful to think that any one politician or any one party is going to bring about this just and good society anyway. It's certainly possible to take steps that direction. It's possible to take steps the opposite direction, and it can be difficult as a voter to know. We don't have a crystal ball. We can't see into the future. We're not superstitious in that way anyway. We're
not supposed to be anyway.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's no small task, and of course our choice is up for moral evaluation as well. We can't not take it seriously, but certainly if you're doing the best you can, considering all the principles, all the issues, all the effects, and then making your choice, then you can take your defense before God when the day of judgment comes and give your account, and He, as perfectly just, will judge us accordingly. So it's something to take seriously, but not something, again, to make you overly scrupulous about as well. And I wouldn't also consider the political sphere the only place in which we can do some good to bring about justice and charity.
And
so we shouldn't put all our hopes in any one candidate, any one party, or in politics more specifically. We should look for community, for family, all those things we talked about in the first segment to build up the body of Christ.
And again, I do think that that's important. I mean, if I were going to leave, if I were going to leave the politicians to be the only ones trying to influence our society, I'm not doing my job.
Sure.
I'm not. That's just saying, oh, you guys go solve all that, and that's certainly not the way I see it. But the very same token, I'm not trying to haggle out, the right wording on laws and legislation and doing all that stuff, and that's hard work. I mean, that takes a specific mindset and some training and knowing how to do legalese and all that stuff. I don't have that, so they better not be looking for me to do that. I paint up here on this level, and in some ways you do too as a teacher. You paint pretty pictures up on that level, but then it's how do we bring them down in a way that can be grasped enough by people. So you've got little kids, okay? Mm-hmm. You got sons, and another mystery on the way. God love yous. But you got little ones. How are you gonna raise them up to live those values? How are you gonna raise them up to care about that stuff? How are you gonna do that?
I think it starts with being an example for them. Hopefully they'll learn from me in that way, and if they see that I love them and care for them and want their happiness, what's best for them, they'll take my example to heart and not do the bad things that I do, but only do the good things that I do. I can't help
You
but
think you're so tough, but go ahead. But
talk about economics, about Catholic teaching, so they'll probably hear it from me eventually, even if they're not students in my classroom. So hopefully I won't get them to tune out too much in that regard either. But I think the example is more important than anything I could say.
Well, and again, those things you were talking about, like the human dignity of every person. Our kids watch us to see if we really believe it.
Sure.
They know we're going to give them that human dignity, okay, because they're ours, okay? But how do we treat the person on the street? How do we treat the waitress? How do we treat the checkout person? how do we treat those people? Do we treat them with the same dignity that we treat the people we love? You know, our kids do absorb that stuff.
Oh, they notice, yeah.
Sure they do. And if we're not living that stuff, if we're not trying to make sure that we share, you know, if we're not getting those values washed down to them at that level, well, we're not. Yeah, how do I wear this in good? You know, how do I wear this in good faith? You know, how do I look in the mirror in the morning? You know, if I'm not trying to live that out, or it's Jesus. But your kids, and I say this all the time, you guys are the first educators of your children. I'll help you. But parents are the first educators of their children. And later on, when they come to us as priests and teachers and all those things, we're already getting, you know, them after they've learned so many other things. And wow, that is just an awesome, but scary responsibility.
No pressure.
Scary responsibility. Oh yeah, no pressure at all, Alex, for you and all the parents that exist out there. At any rate, my guest this morning, Dr. Alex Binder, professor at Pitt State, talking about where faith and our learning and our expressions of that in the world all come together and meet. Stick around, we'll be right back after this Mercy Minute.
A new baby changes the world and each of us. The Sisters of Mercy devoted themselves to offering exceptional maternity and delivery care, training generations of nurses to do the same. Mercy continues to answer the same call, to not only care for your baby, but to cherish them too. Mercy, in every era, your life is our life's work. Learn why we serve at mercy.net/legacy. In Ireland, the first Sisters of Mercy were called the Walking Sisters because every day they went out in search of women and children who needed healing or help. Mercy continues to answer the same call, dedicated to the health of every woman who comes to us for care. Mercy, in every era, your life is our life's work. Learn why we serve at mercy.net/legacy.
You know, I'm always amazed sometimes, you know, when I think I've got three shows that we're going to tape and we're going to do our thing, and it's all going to be good, and then I show up and somebody shows up that I had no idea was coming, and today was one of those examples with Dr. Alex Binder. He sits in my congregation, love him, he's a good man, but today was fun because I didn't know I was going to have a conversation at this level with him about some of the things that he does and how he teaches. And how he as a person of faith puts those things together. We've had some of those shows in the past, but today was a nice surprise. And so I'm grateful. I'm always grateful when we have a chance to share life with each other, to share those ideas that kind of propel us forward and make us better people. And that's why we do this show. We're trying to make our area better. We're trying to make each other better. And by rubbing up against each other and getting those ideas out there and trying to follow faith as we see it here in our hometown. So join us again next week. Have a great Sunday. God bless you.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.